Welcome back to Philosophy 104, Worldviews. I don't think that there's a single one of these 16 lessons that is as difficult as this one is for me to do. It's not difficult because it's painful. It's just difficult because it's so personal. When we discuss Islam, what is personal for me is that it's, quite frankly, it's easy for me to teach because it's the world in which I was raised. So it's not like I'm some sort of expert if you were raised in it. You just learn it by osmosis. But it's misconception that drives me crazy. Not just misconception among the Christian world. I've been thrilled that in the past decade or so, there's been an increasing interest in my kinsmen according to the flesh. The Persian, the Anatolian, and the Arab, the 1 billion people plus who are Muslims, have really made it to the front page of everybody's prayer journals. More and more students are surrendering here at Liberty University to go on missions specifically to the Middle East. More and more students are actually doing mission trips. More and more people are talking about and writing about. I mean, goodness gracious, Islam is probably one of the most heated topics and most fundamentally discussed things in the past decade. Problem is that it's not just the misunderstanding, but it's the misconceptions of Islam, the constant influx of wrong teaching that affects worldview. To understand the Islamic mindset, you cannot think as a Westerner and try to apply that to the Islamic mind. To understand Islam, you have to go deeper. Every time you turn on your television and you see somebody saying, oh, this is a war of cousins, the sons of Ishmael and the sons of Isaac, that's just logically impossible. Forget biblically impossible. It is logically impossible for a religious group to be the genetic forebearers. It's just impossible. But further, this constant influx of, oh, come on, it's a peaceful religion, we coexist. What? In 1,300 years of history, let me ask you a question. In 1,300 years of Islamic history, name one period of time or one country where my people have existed peacefully alongside of anyone in any country where they've been the minority. We haven't. Is that because Muslims are fighters? Is that because we are Middle Easterners and we argue about everything? No. It's theological. It's a worldview issue. In Islam, the founder is Muhammad. From 570 AD until his death at 632, Muhammad is the core and the essence of Islam. Now, he was raised in Saudi Arabia, in a place that was basically a crossroads of trade. And where he was raised, he had north-south and east-west travel and trade routes. And he himself, he was a trader, meaning that was his work, trade. And he saw all these variant groups. From Africa, he saw the animists who worship trees and such, voodoo. And from the north, he saw the Hindus. He saw Christians and Coptics all over his land who were missionaries into his country. But really, in the Middle East, there was no unifying, cohesive belief system. You had warring tribes and warring gods. And it's into that world that Muhammad brings Islam. The story goes this way. On his 40th birthday at 610 AD, on his 40th birthday, Muhammad, who'd been married for 15 years, been married to a woman who was 15 years his senior, Khadija, Muhammad receives a vision in a cave. The vision he receives on his 40th birthday is one that profoundly impacts him. As a matter of fact, the hadith, which is the sayings and examples of Muhammad himself, the hadith records that he rolled around and roared like a camel and almost swallowed his tongue. He comes out of this trance, this grand mal seizure, if you will, and he asks his wife, what just happened to me? And he was terrified. He was scared. He thought maybe it was a demon. His wife convinces him that, in fact, it was God trying to give him a message. The message he began to receive on that day that continued all the way until his death for the next 22 years became the collection known as the Quran. The Quran operated with this central worldview. And if you understand this, you can understand anything that takes place on the television. The Muslim believes that the Jew had the truth but corrupted it. The Christian had the truth and corrupted it. And the day that Muhammad received his vision, there was no true religion on the earth. That Muhammad, as the final prophet, was there to restore religion and to be the final voice for Allah. What he begins to teach is not a correction of Christianity, it's a radical departure therefrom. It's not a correction of Judaism, it's a radical departure therefrom. His basic teachings operated on the 5 pillars of Islam. And you'll see a lot of mirrors here, but I'll get back to that in a second. There was Abinadab, the creed. It was sort of like us confessing Christ as Lord. Well, in the Muslim mind, you say this Shahada. There is only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his final seal of the prophets. That's Abinadab, the Shahada. Salat, Zakat, Swan. Prayer, fasting, almsgiving. Prayer, well, of course, he had seen the monks pray. And 5 times a day you were to face. At the very beginning, you faced Jerusalem. But it changed later until they faced Mecca, the Kaaba. Fasting. During the month of Ramadan, you fast from sunrise to sunset, 40 days on the lunar calendar. And there seems to be a parallel there, doesn't there? It's Lent. And then, of course, almsgiving and our tithing, except tithing being 10%, and for the Muslim it's 1/40 of your eternal value, of your actual value, 2.5%. And then there's the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, to the beginning of Islam. Sounds an awful lot like the pilgrimages that the Catholics went on to Jerusalem, doesn't it? But I'm not comparing Islam to Catholicism. I'm saying Muhammad stole those concepts. What he developed was a system entirely based on works, where he replaced Jesus. Jesus was not Messiah, and a Muslim cannot believe in the crucifixion. The 4th chapter of the Quran, verse 157, is essential for the Muslim. It teaches that Jesus wasn't crucified. Somebody else was crucified in his place. And so, if there's no death on the cross, then there's no atonement, and now salvation's up for grabs, and now you understand Islam. We are taught that from the moment you are born, you live and die by your actions. That every good deed goes on the good scales, every bad deed goes on the bad scales. Good word on the good scales, bad words on the bad scales. Bad thoughts, good thoughts, etc. That at the end of your life, you have to be more good than bad by following the explicit instructions of the Quran. You live by the dietary restrictions of halal and haram. Halal is allowable food, haram is forbidden food. There's all these, like a kosher diet, there's all these parallels. But I want you to understand the core and the essence of Islam. Because every now and again, somebody will say, oh, okay, well, I mean, sure, he modified some things, he changed things, but they were all basically talking about the same God. Listen to me very carefully. Until I became a Christian, I never, ever, ever heard anybody spout such nonsense in my life. No true Muslim would ever in a million years believe that the God of Christianity, the God of the Bible, and Allah of the Quran are the same God. I've had multiple debates. I've never met one Muslim, not one, who's ever believed that the 99 names of terror and glory in the Quran are the same God as the intimate, personal, triune God of the Bible. Not one. Well then, if it's not the same God, how are we supposed to understand? I want to give you this as the apologetic. I hope you can follow. Islam is nothing but medieval Mormonism. That is, everything that Joseph Smith did in the 19th century, everything that Brigham Young did in the 19th century, Muhammad had already done back in the 6th century and the 7th century. As a matter of fact, the similarities are so profound that I'm going to take a little extra time just to show you what I'm talking about. For instance, both in Mormonism and in Islam, the founder believed that true religion did not exist on the planet. Both Mormonism and Islam teach that the Jew had the truth and lost it, the Christian had the truth and lost it. Both Mormonism and Islam teach that their founder received a vision, ecstatic, that it radically transformed him. that they were the only ones who could hear the sound of the voice. Both of them believed that the messenger who brought them this message was an angel. In Mormonism, it's the angel Moroni. In Islam, it was the angel Jibreel. Both believed that they received these messages on golden tablets, buried in Mormonism, but in Islam they were preserved in paradise. Both Islam and Mormonism teach that Jesus Christ was only a prophet. And he wasn't even the best prophet. He wasn't even the last prophet. He was the next to last prophet. That they were proclaiming as the last prophet the truth. So Brigham Young was the prophet, and Muhammad was the prophet. Both of them radically departed from salvation by grace and taught salvation by works. Both Islam and Mormonism are theocratic. That is, truth has to be legislated. Mormonism, of course, established the temple. Both of them have secret rites and secret places, the Mecca and the Mormon Tabernacle. Both of them believe that you have to legislate truth, meaning that it had to be legal, Sharia law in Islam. And of course, the beginnings of Mormonism when they attempted to set up their own kingdom. Both Islam and Mormonism teach that Jesus spoke about their prophet, the coming of their prophet. In the 61st chapter of the Quran, Muhammad says that Jesus said, well, I must go so that a comforter may come. And that comforter, of course, in Islam is Ahmed, which is, of course, a shortened version of Muhammad. Both Islam and Mormonism replace Israel. And Mormons believe they were the lost tribe of Israel. Muslims believe they're the tribe of Ishmael. Both of them had a common hatred for the Jew. And both Mormonism and Islam believed in jihad, the Battle of the Mountain Massacre in Mormonism. And of course, we see it unfolding in front of our eyes in Islam. In Islam, there's only one person who has an absolute certainty that he's going to paradise. Muhammad even said in the hadith, he did not know where he was going. I mean, if the prophet, who's considered the exemplar, according to the 33rd chapter of the Quran, if the prophet cannot know, well, goodness gracious, who can know? But the martyr can know. The martyr who dies for his faith, who dies and sheds his blood. And therein lies the apologetic as we close. A Muslim, from his worldview, believes in atonement. He just doesn't believe in vicarious atonement. A Muslim believes in blood forgiveness. But you see, we believe that we must shed our own blood to find our own forgiveness. I point it out this way, and I say it as graphically as I can because I wanted to get your attention. Jesus Christ strapped himself to a cross so that I wouldn't have to strap a bomb filled with shrapnel to my body and kill innocent people. Jesus Christ's death on the cross was removed from Islam on purpose because they had to continue atoning for their own sins. Muhammad understood that if Jesus died on the cross, was buried, resurrected, then works die. Understand that a Muslim is very devout because he is scared. He lives in terror. He lives in fear of not knowing if he's done more good than bad. And he knows in his heart of hearts he cannot do more good than bad. And so he lives by these exacting rules. And bless her heart, if there's a woman in Islam that you know, she lives as a secondary inferior citizen in a system that subjugates her. You have to reach into the life of the Muslim and tell them that true freedom is found not in jihad, not in subjugating the world by conversion or conquest, but by subjugating yourself, offering yourself as a living sacrifice in salvation. I surrender. I cannot be good enough. God is not removed. Allah is separate. Allah is judge, but Allah does not come live in your heart. But the God of the Bible, I am a temple of the Holy Spirit. He lives inside of me. That message of grace and forgiveness and atonement, it destroys the worldview of the one who thinks he's got to work his way in, and it reaches into the life of the Muslim.